On our side, we focus on the trigger. And at the global level, what we see is a significant deceleration of global trade and activity. And there is currently a huge shock of uncertainty related to the deterioration of political context across the world. So this huge shock of uncertainty has triggered a significant deceleration.
So why is there less trade going on? Why is there less activity going on?
The origin of that is the trade dispute between the US and China. And
so hang on, a trade dispute between the US and China is enough to trigger riots in Chile or Lebanon?
Yes, of course, because the capacity of population to withstand, to absorb structural reform depends on the economic environment. And what we see as a common point between those difficulties across country is the fact is that there is a kind of fatigue as regards the implementation of structural reform. We know as economists that this is always easier to implement structural reform when the economic environment is easier, is more favorable. But when you observe a significant deterioration of the economic context, then the population is more demanding and asks for more redistribution, is less likely to accept effort and the continuation of structural reform.
Tonight in Guinea, 5 opposition leaders are sentenced for organising last week's fatal protests. The unrest was against a possible change to the constitution that could let President Alpha Condé seek a third term. Also, Botswana's gearing up for an election that, for the first time in several decades, sees the ruling BDP face a serious challenge to its bid. Political issues are overshadowed by bad blood between the current president and his predecessor and former ally. And Ivorian designer Lafalaise Dion is the queen of the cowries. Her shell-studded pieces are in global demand after Queen Bee, megastar Beyoncé, for those not in the know, wore a striking cowrie shell headpiece in a music video for the Lion King album. But first, Guinea-Conakry's opposition alliance is calling for more protests, even after 5 of their leaders were jailed on Tuesday for organising recent fatal rallies. At least 9 people have been killed since unrest broke out last week over President Alpha Condé's efforts to change the constitution to potentially allow him a third term. Pierre Delheur has more.
The 5 opposition leaders were handed jail terms on Tuesday for their role in organizing protests that brought much of Guinea to a standstill. Their lawyers say they're being persecuted by authorities.
We're disappointed, but not surprised by this decision. But let us make one thing clear. Neither violence, nor threats, nor unprecedented judicial decisions will stop Guineans from voicing their opinion or use the rights and liberties guaranteed by the Constitution.
Last week's demonstrations erupted into violent clashes with the police. They were led by the FNDC, a coalition of politicians and activists opposed to plans to change the constitution. The former government minister, Abdourahmane Sano, was given a 1-year jail term. 4 other leaders received 6-month sentences. The defendants had been arrested 2 days before the protests began.
In accordance with the Constitution, these citizens had called their countrymen to protest and show their opposition to a change of constitution which only aims to install a lifetime presidency system in the Republic of Guinea.
Guinea's 81-year-old president Alpha Condé, whose second and final 5-year term expires next year, has refused to rule out running again. He's asked his government to look into drafting a new constitution, which could greenlight a potential third term. The move sparked last week's opposition protests, during which police opened fire on demonstrators, resulting in at least 9 deaths.
Botswana's gearing up for an election that, for the first time in 5 decades, sees the ruling Botswana Democratic Party, the BDP, face a serious challenge to its bid. Incumbent leader Mokwetsi Masisi is facing Duma Boko, the leader for the Umbrella for Democratic Change. It's a new party formed by former President Ian Khama, who handed over to Masisi last year, only to see his hand-picked successor reverse several of his policies and become his bitter rival. Regional correspondent Jane Flanagan tells us more.
The big themes would normally be the economy, corruption, unemployment, human-wildlife conflicts, farming, reforms of the mining sector. But all these themes are really being overshadowed into what is turning into a popularity contest, if you like, between the Kharmas, Ian Kharma, the former president, and his brother, Shikedi Kharma, and President Masisi, who had been Ian Kharma's deputy and then anointed successor. But it really has become very overshadowed. The themes have become very overshadowed, really, into a popularity contest between these two sides, the old guard and the new guard.
So why did things go sour between Kharma and Masisi?
Well, Ian Kharma stepped down after his 2 terms, made way for his deputy, President Masisi. I think really feeling that he put everything in place for the ruling party to go forward under his chosen successor. But quite quickly, President Masisi asserted himself and sacked several of Ian Kharma's close allies, and also reversed a couple of very key policies, notably lifting the moratorium on elephant hunting, which caused international outcry among conservationists. However, it is a policy that is popular in rural areas of Botswana, where elephants trample properties, crops, ruin people's livelihoods. And so President Masisi really has asserted himself and is looking for his fresh mandate for election.
Jane Flanagan there for us. A look now at some news in brief. More than 6,000 people have lost their homes to flooding in Central African Republic's capital. Many people living in the informal neighbourhood of District 6 in Bangui saw their homes swept away after recent heavy rains caused the Ubangi River to burst its banks. Authorities are worried that the emergency will lead to people falling ill from water contamination. Ethiopia said it could rally millions if a stalemate over huge regional dam project that it is spearheading led to conflict with Egypt. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed made the remarks during a parliamentary Q&A. Talks over the $5 billion Nile Dam collapsed earlier this month. It's about 70% complete, but Egypt fears the project will encroach on its share of the Nile River and has cast the issue as a national security threat that could warrant military action. Abiy, who won the Nobel Peace Prize earlier this month, has said that the dam will be finished come what may. And Nigeria has charged the directors of a company that won a $9 billion arbitration award against the government with fraud and money laundering. Britain's James Richard Nolan and Adam Quinn have pled not guilty. They run P&ID, a tiny offshore firm that says Nigeria reneged on an oil deal. Nigeria claims the whole thing is a scam and that the original contract was only signed because of bribery. Last month, the UK court allowed Nigeria to appeal a ruling that would have let the private company seize $9.6 billion worth of Nigeria's foreign assets. Now, Beyoncé wore a particularly eye-catching cowrie shell headpiece in the music video for one of her songs on The Lion King. You might have noticed it. Now, that outfit was created by Ivorian designer Lafalaise Dion. Since then, the megastar's patrimony of her creations has seen her pieces be snapped up around the world. Sales have gone through the roof. Our correspondent caught up with her in Ivory Coast.
A photo shoot in Abidjan. A young model is fitted out in a new dress made of shells under the guidance of designer Lafalaise Dion. The Queen of Cowries constantly updates her Instagram account with new creations.
Sometimes I model the pieces myself, and other days I use somebody else. That's the only way for me to see the true beauty of my work.
Her collection is based on cowries, a shell used by West Africans for centuries. She also draws her inspiration from the outfits of Ivory Coast traditional masked dancers.
I started doing research around spirituality and ancestral knowledge. I was always coming across cowries. They were used as currency, but also to decorate women's bodies.
But her career took off when Beyoncé wore her shell headpiece in the Spirit music video. In a matter of seconds, La Falaise Dion became one of Africa's most popular fashion stylists.
Almost 80% of my customers are from America, mostly African Americans. They are fascinated by cowries as they form a legacy left by their ancestors. It also represents African spirituality.
Sales went through the roof. Dion now has an apprentice to help her, but her work in the industry has now been copied. There is a fine line between inspiration and imitation.
People know that cowries are a part of their African heritage. They think that my pieces are made by others too, so they would rather do them themselves instead of buying them from me.
Having studied journalism in Abidjan, Dion became the content manager of Elle magazine in Côte d'Ivoire. But her career as a fashion designer is taking over.